Recently, I've been really struggling to find the time to learn languages because I have a full-time job. I've been invited to various weddings in different countries, so I had to travel a lot. And I'm also working on my language learning app. But I would really like to study Chinese every day. So how do I make time for that? I would like to discuss that in this video and to break it down into 3 approaches that I use to time management. But first, if you don't know me yet, my name is Alex. I've learned more than 10 languages and I make these videos to share my experience and my insights. So I've been feeling quite stressed recently because there have been a lot of unexpected things happening in my life. And I started looking at all of these things like something that is taking away from my time that I could otherwise spend studying languages. So when I got invited to an event here, or I had to work longer at my job, all these things, I saw them as wasted time that I could otherwise spend learning languages. But I had a very big realization there and a mindset shift that really helped me to change my attitude. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But first, let's look at how many hours we have every day. So a day has 24 hours, of which let's assume that we sleep for 8 hours and work or study at university for 8 hours. So that leaves another 8. So of that time, we probably spend 1 hour commuting. Let's say we spend 2 hours eating, 2 hours relaxing or socializing, 1 hour working out, and that would still leave 2 hours every day that we could spend learning languages. Now, 2 hours is actually quite a lot. I made a video where I discussed how with 30 minutes a day, you can actually achieve quite a lot within a year in a language that is easy. So if we start looking at how much time we spend on different tasks every day, we can easily find 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there that would sum up to one hour a day that we could spend learning languages. So that is the first level to look at the time that we're not doing anything. The second level is to look at dead time. By dead time, I mean time where we are doing something, but we could be doing 2 things at the same time. One big one is traveling. When we are commuting to work, that is actually a perfect time to be reading something, listening something. If you travel by public transport, it's very easy to read a book, to read a chapter in a book in the language that you're learning, or to practice some flashcards. If you're driving, of course, you cannot read there, but you can listen. You can listen to a podcast episode, and the same if you're walking or if you're cycling. Now, if you're flying, of course, that's not something that usually happens every week. And of course, for the environment, you shouldn't fly every week. But I've been on planes quite a lot recently. And I mean, flying is quite boring, right? And that's why everybody's watching films there. So that is actually a perfect time to be watching a film in our target language. Or if we're not watching a film, you can read something in the target language, or just grab your phone and practice flashcards or so. But it is a really great time where we are doing something and we can be studying languages at the same time. Another big activity which most of us do is working out, going to the gym, or maybe going for a walk. That is also a perfect time where we can be listening to something. Maybe we are listening to a podcast in the language that we're learning. And so we're at the same time doing a mental workout and a physical workout, which is a really great combination. A great time is also right after waking up or before going to sleep, when we're already in bed. That is a time where we often, after waking up, would grab the phone and scroll something and so on. And that is quite normal because, of course, it's not natural to wake up and then jump out of bed immediately. But we could actually use those 10-15 minutes every morning that our brain needs to wake up. We could use that time to practice flashcards on our phone or to read something in our target language. And we could do that also in the evening before we go to bed. So in that way, we create 2 slots in our day when we are practicing in the morning and in the evening. And this also reinforces spaced repetition, where we are practicing the same thing in the morning and in the evening. And that is a really powerful way to memorize what we're learning. So the big change here is that while in the first approach we look at what time do we have available during the day. In our second approach, we are not looking at adding language learning on top of everything else that we have in our lives, but we look at how we can integrate language learning in what we are already doing in our lives, and therefore we don't have to create extra time for it. And that is the more advanced approach. And now let's come to the third approach, which is psychological time. So what we've been talking about until now, I would call it clock time, which is the actual time in minutes that we have. And the third approach, psychological time, is about how much time we think we have. Because the issue, why we're not studying sometimes, why we're not making time to study, is not necessarily because there is no time, because there are no minutes in the day to study. But very often it's because we feel we don't have time, we think we don't have time. And why is that? Many times it's because there's just too many things happening in our lives, and I've had this a lot recently, that I feel like I notice I have to do this and I have to do that, and there's just so many things happening, and I keep thinking, oh my god, I never have time to study languages. And I actually do have time, but because I always tell myself that I don't have time, I kind of reinforce this, and in the end I end up not studying at all because I think that I don't have time. So what can we do about that? There are two nice approaches which I used. The first one is to create an external structure. That is, for example, if we sign up for a class or we sign up for lessons with an online tutor, having one lesson every week or having two lessons every week gives our lives a certain structure. There is a structure imposed on us from the outside. And this forces us to make time for these classes because we have a certain social accountability, and that forces us to make time. And this in turn helps us to create more time around these classes. So we might be preparing for a class 30 minutes in advance, or the evening before, and we might be revising what we learned in a class afterwards. So by building this structure into our life, we break this pattern of thinking, oh my god, there's so many things going on in my life and I don't have time now. And it creates these small pockets of time which we can use and then build more time for language learning around these small pockets. The second approach, which I really like a lot, and I've been using it recently and it has really helped me a lot, is the concept of the daily highlight. And this comes from a book called Make Time, which I will link down below. The daily highlight is basically that you choose to make something, a small goal, your daily highlight. And your goal with studying the language is just to reach this daily highlight. And the daily highlight should be something quite easy to achieve. So, for example, you watch one episode in a series in your target language, or you just practice 10 flashcards, something very easy. And when you have achieved that, you have achieved your daily highlight. And after that, you can continue to study more if you want to, but you don't have to because you have achieved your daily highlight. But why should this daily highlight be a goal that is easy to achieve? Because that sounds like we're then not really making so much progress. Well, the point here is to be studying at least something instead of nothing. Because the risk is that if we feel very stressed and we feel overwhelmed in our lives, then we end up not studying at all. And it's also because we may give ourselves too high expectations from every study session that we think, okay, now I want to sit down and I want to finish 5 chapters, 7 chapters, and we feel very stressed about that, and then we end up not studying at all. So by having this small daily highlight, what we achieve is, first, we are studying rather than not studying, and second, we allow ourselves to feel happy and satisfied with ourselves. Because if we feel stressed, we may often think that we are not doing as much as we could be doing, that we're not studying as much as we should be. And by achieving the daily highlight every day, we reinforce this positive feeling that every day we have done what we set out to do, and that actually creates a really positive feedback loop and allows us to feel much better about ourselves, and that will actually eventually make us feel more free to study more than what our initial goal was. So the shift here is to not look for empty time slots in our daily lives, but to become much more intentional with the time that we have and to realize that you can make time. You know, I have a friend who goes to the gym every day for 1.5 hours. I mean, that sounds crazy to me. 1.5 hours, that is so much time that I would feel like I could spend that time doing other things, but he is being intentional with his time. He decides to make time, and that is the same approach that we can also learn. If you found this video interesting and you are generally interested in the topic of time and language learning, you might want to check out this video here where I discuss how much time we should study every day in order to achieve fluency in various languages, and I really dive deep comparing the time it takes to learn German, French, or a difficult language like Japanese. So check it out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts on this, please write them in the comments below. I always reply to all the comments I receive. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice day. Because the issue is that we feel overwhelmed and we end up not studying at all, or that we is das eigentlich möglich?